Welcome to part 23, the final part of the mini golf marble machine build. In this video, I'll finish the marble machine by adding in a few landscape features, and we'll also add all the water elements. First, I painted the outside walls gray to match the mini golf barriers. There were a few seams in the front of the catch basin that I filled with two long shrubs. The one on the left had to be cut thinner to fit around the curve without sticking out past the outside wall. I've been very aware of an ongoing issue about the distribution of marbles around the red cottage. The way that the hole is laid out, 99% of the marbles would fall into the same hole that led through the cottage. Ideally, they would distribute evenly to all three holes. For a while, I had been trying different things to fix this issue, and I finally found a simple and effective solution. I added a very tiny piece to the side of the hole that, if bumped into by a marble, will change its course and vary which of the three holes it drops into. I finally found a solution that was hardly noticeable and pretty evenly distributes the marbles. Since the speed of the marbles going into the hole is slightly different each time, they don't always hit this new bump. And that means some of the marbles still end up going through the cottage, which is great. The marbles that do hit the bump all hit it slightly differently, which creates the needed variety. Okay, now it's finally time to add the water. The water for the two basins will be made out of realistic water and tinted with a specific dye to give it a rich blue color. And of course, I needed a few things to mix and apply it. I started with a few ounces of the water and mixed in a few drops of the dye. I kept adding drops until I got the color I wanted. This has to be poured in thin layers to properly dry. And since the water will be fairly deep, it took a few pours to get it just right. And it must dry completely before adding another layer. So this process took a few days to complete. I added some water to the tributaries that lead to the basins, so you can start to get a feel as to where the water will be throughout. The basin under the water wheel will be deeper than the one on the right, so this one required a few more pours to build that depth. Next, I started to work on the waterfalls. This is the other main product I used from Woodland Scenics. It's meant to be used for rapids and ripples and other textural water elements. It's also great for making waterfalls. So I measured out the height and the width of the waterfalls on a piece of photo paper. Then I applied it to the page and used a popsicle stick to get the desired texture of the waterfall. Similar to the water, this also needs at least 24 hours to properly dry. Unfortunately, after coming back the next day, I realized that I couldn't get the waterfalls off the page. I had used a photo paper with a surface that the water elements stuck to and wouldn't come off at all. So I tried again on the back side of the photo paper and had to wait another 24 hours. This side had a much more slippery surface and ended up working great when it was time to remove it. I made 3 waterfalls. The largest one will go on the right side of the machine. One of the smaller ones will be on the left side near the water wheel, and the other one will be cut up and used as needed. During all this, it was time to add another layer to the water wheel basin. I started with the big waterfall. I put it in place and finagled it around until it was in the right spot. I had to do a little bit of trimming to get it to look just right. I did the same thing with the other major waterfall on the left side. When I was content with how both of them looked, I affixed them in place. I was pretty happy that I didn't have to go back and remake the waterfalls for a third time. The water effects works like glue to keep the waterfalls in place, and will dry to match. After attaching both waterfalls at the top and bottom, I started adding the water effects throughout the machine. I continued the route of the water all the way to the basin on the left side. Next, I tacked in a small waterfall above the big one, and then added water effects to the rest of the rivers. I brought out a few carving tools to help fine-tune the look of the river. Here, you can see where all the water is positioned, and now I have to wait 24 hours to let all that properly dry. To make the waterfalls more realistic looking, I added white paint to the face. The technique I came up with on how to apply it, I think makes all the difference on how realistic it looks. I got some paint on a small paintbrush and wiped it off until there wasn't enough paint to make a clean stroke. That's when I brushed it on, from the base going upwards. This gives the appearance that the waterfall is a bit more aerated at the bottom than the top. I did this with all the waterfalls and added white paint to anywhere that is meant to look like moving water. Next, I added one more top layer of water to both ponds to make sure that their color matched. I still had extra blue water from that pour, so I painted it on the rest of the rivers and waterfalls to give it a slight blue tint. I'm super stoked with how all the water turned out. It really brings together the finished look of the machine. I added a tiny bit more white paint on top of the new layer of water at the base of the waterfall. I had been doing quite a bit of testing on the machine during the process on unsealed paint, so I touched up the green paint where it was needed. The last and final thing to do was to seal in the paint. I used a spray with a matte finish to prevent any unwanted sheen. And with that done, this build is 100% complete. I'll be putting together a final product video to showcase the machine, similar to what I did with Marble Mountain. If you followed along through the entire build, or at least some of the build, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it and found it enlightening. If you'd like me to continue doing this for the marble machines I build, feel free to leave a comment saying so. I already have my next small project planned, but if you have an idea for a marble machine, let me know and maybe I'll build it. Stay tuned for updates and more videos. Thanks for watching.